Hey yogis, welcome back to the next session on Anubhav Learning Series. This is the part 2 of our first video which we had discussed about creating a consumption CDS, enabling an OData service development on top of that CDS view, and then enabling the update entity set method for updating the test data. In this part, we will discuss about how to handle concurrency and locking in the REST-based architecture using ETACs. So let's first talk about what is concurrency. Once again, if you have not subscribed to my ABAP on HANA training, I would encourage you to go to onlinefurytrainings.com and subscribe to my ABAP on HANA course to be able to understand this video in a much better way. You can find also all the videos, free videos on Anubhav Learning Series on my website onlinefurytrainings.com, and you can download the source code and the presentation right from here itself. Thank you so much for liking and sharing your comments on my first video of this part, this continuation of series. We will look at now in this particular video how to enable and handle the concurrency in REST architecture. So let's talk about first of all what is concurrency. In order to understand concurrency, we need to first understand the definition of concurrency. Concurrency is all about when client try to require, or when two people or more than two people try to acquire limited resource or the same resource. That's when concurrency occurs. Just to take an example, if you have want to book a flight ticket, and right now in the flight which you are trying to book, there is only one seat left. You try to hit this the create booking button. At the same time, your friend who's sitting next to you also try to book the same flight ticket. So that's actually concurrency for the software. So what typically most of the software does, they would entertain the request which reaches first to them, that guy is going to actually get the ticket. But at the same time, just to avoid confusion, just to avoid the concurrency updates, we need to also lock the data at times when we are editing the data. So when multiple people try to acquire a resource which is limited, or the resource which is maybe one or two in limited in numbers, and they all try to acquire the same resource at the same time, a concurrency occurs. At times, such concurrency leads to deadlocks, and such concurrency would also may lead to inconsistent behavior from the user point of view. When a user try to see the data which user was supposed to update, on the next read call, user would see the data is completely different, and that would create probably a confusion. At the same time, it will be also not so transparent for the end user whether my data got updated successfully or not, or whether my booking will be done or not. That's something which user is not aware of. So what typically software developer does, they handle they do something called locking of the data when there is an edit happening on such a critical important data. So let's try to understand what are all the types of lockings which are available in SAP system. But before that, let's quickly go back to this architecture where we are now using OData service in a Fiori application to update the data. Guys, we are now using these days REST architecture. In a REST architecture, we have a stateless communication with the server, which means there is a request which goes from the Fiori application. The request is now processed by your SAP system, and then the response goes back right away. There is no session which is stored anymore after the response in the SAP system. So your SAP system does not know actually what was the session, what was done earlier in the last call. Is in compared to SAP GUI, whereas you have a session persistence always in the SAP system, in SAP application server, which you can also check in transaction code SM04. So here it's a stateless communication. So in a stateful communication, you have a better control on concurrency because you can apply a locking mechanism. But here, the moment you try to lock a resource, the moment response goes away, response goes back to the Fiori app, the lock gets released also. So how do you handle locking capability? This was also one of the most important question which many of you have asked me in the past. Anubhav, how can we handle the locking? How can we handle concurrent updates? Whereas in SAP system we have entire typical dialog programming paradigm which we used to do in past. We used to have lock objects, and those lock objects used to lead to NQ and DQ function modules to enable and disable the locks. And we used to do pessimistic locking. I mean, if one person is editing a sales order, then another person tries to open the same sales order, immediately they get an error that sales order is being currently edited by some user, right? So that is what used to happen in the past days. But now how do you handle that in context of REST architecture, where you have a completely stateless communication with the server? So to understand that, let's first try to understand the types of locking which is available in any system, or especially in context of SAP. The first type of locking which we have is called pessimistic locking. So in a pessimistic locking, what is the definition? In this scenario, the application assumes that concurrent writes or updates, whatever you call them, will occur so often. Okay, they are tend to occur like an application flight booking table, and maybe there is a special event getting organized maybe in Bangalore, and then everybody is trying to rush towards Bangalore, right? So in that case you would see a heavy load on the system, and so many people will be booking tickets all the way to the Bangalore, right? In that case you would observe there will be heavy load on the server, heavy concurrent requests to book flights towards the Bangalore from different locations, right? So that's one case where there are so frequent chances that lots of concurrent updates will be triggered on the system. So a write will occur, and hence we need to aggressively protect the resources which are getting updated. Yeah, we need to very aggressively protect them without being edited by multiple requests at same time using pessimistic locks. And this can lead to okay, and at times these pessimistic locks can lead to deadlocks. Yeah, so let's say I try to edit a resource, at the same time I'm locking the resource, and at the exact same time another person also logged it. So now until my log gets released he cannot edit, and until his logs gets released I cannot edit. So it's sometimes become very unhealthy for applications where you have a deadlock situation arises and everybody is kind of locked, and then you have to go and delete these logs manually from SM12 transactions. Now also it can lead to performance overheads, because there will be many requests lying in the queue. So this could lead to also performance issues. So that's a pessimistic locking. Using lock object we used to use that. The another type of locking is called optimistic locking. In case of optimistic locks, what typically happens? In this scenario, the application assumes that the likelihood of a concurrent write is rare. It's not so often, you know. Like for example, sales order. You have thousands of sales order in an application, and you would probably easily can assume that it's very rare that one person working in some sales organization with some country with some location would probably have an edit, another person would edit at the same time the same sales order, like typical cases of our Fiori applications where such occurrences of concurrent updates are very rare. You know, you can consider to be very rare, especially in case of Fiori, right? So in these cases we need to still allow, we need to allow operations to continue and lock resources for very small period of time. And this is the best way which we will be using in this video tutorial. How can we achieve that optimistic locking with the help of ETAGs to track if there is something changed or not, and also to lock the resources before doing an update in the REST call. And then comes is a semi-optimistic. which is actually a mixture of the pessimistic and optimistic locking. It's a combination of both pessimistic and optimistic concurrency controls. And this kind of solution is used to very specific scenarios. Okay. Now for the data concurrency, OData recommends implementing entity tags or so-called E-tags. So what is E-tag? So E-tag stands for entity tags. We want to mark every record of OData response with a special property called E-tag. Usually a timestamp indicating when was the record changed last time. So usually the E-tag is considered to be the timestamp. Of course, you can also construct these E-tags by using your test data and creating a raw string out of it. All these things you can do, but the most common scenario where E-tag to be used as the last changed date and time combination for the data. Okay. Now to understand the E-tag concept in general, it's not an industry general concept, not specific to SAP. But let's try to understand what is E-tag, how does it work. So let's take an example. Now here I have a Fiori application. It's a client running on mobile or a tablet or wherever, and it makes a GET request to getting the sales order data, yeah, to the server, to your SAP gateway server. And now what does the server does is, now server adds something called an E-tag. Okay, what server is doing here, server is also adding now a special property to every response which it makes, which is so called an E-tag. Now you can see some format here. Don't go by the format. Let's assume this is a timestamp or date and time combination, or it could be something. And now this tag is sent along with the response. When somebody queries the sales order data, response is sent in JSON with HTTP status 200, and this tag is sent to the client. And now client keeps this, your browser stores this tag information. So you as the end user don't really have to care. And this is not a cookie, guys, by the way. Some people confuse the E-tag with cookie. This is not cookie. Okay, cookie is mainly for sometimes for the purpose of handling the session, handling the authentication. So that's where the cookie is used. Here it's E-tag. It's all about your server resource lifespan, whether the server resource was changed or not changed, what is the state. So this also gives great advantages. Point one, next time when you want to read some resource, you want to make another call once again to read the sales order, you don't have to tell the server, hey server, please get me all the sales order. Doesn't need to do that, because if the data in the server did not even changed, why do you need to get this entire payload once again from the server, right? Make sense? So when you make a request, you got the response first time with an E-tag, and you're keeping this E-tag over here. And the next time again you would say to the server, hey server, I would need to know, read the sales order. What you can do is you can, with the client itself, send this E-tag. Okay, within the header of the request, you will say if match and pass your E-tag and send it to server. And now server checks when was the last data updated in myself. Yeah, and if there is no change in the data over this span of time when I last sent the response back with this E-tag, I compare on the server whether the E-tag is matching with the last sent E-tag to the client. If it is matching, hey man, there is nothing changed. Why do you want me to send you the data again? There is no need to read the data once again because it's nothing changed. Yeah, so the client can keep the same data and display that to the user. So as a result of that, you avoided unnecessary loading of data. Point one, from the server, you reduce drastically the network cost. You reduce drastically also the payload which used to send over the network. As a result of that, your performance will improve overall. Your network load has been reduced down, and that's a great advantage. Now, same E-tag concept can also be used for update scenarios, concurrent update scenarios. So what happens, let's assume that I make a put call to update a resource in the server. And now I am updating the resource in the server, and I add an E-tag. And once this is updated, the update is successful and I receive a new E-tag with me. Now, let's imagine a case. I am having a concurrent environment where multiple clients are connected, multiple Fiori applications used by different users are connected to this server. Now, the first client sends a put request and say, hey, please change this data. The last time when the data was read by both the clients, the E tag was 5547. Something was there, and both the clients were having this E tag 5547. You see 5547. Both the clients having the same E tag. Yeah, when they read the data first time. But in the meantime, while the client 2 is reviewing the data, the client 1 has already sent a put request saying, hey, please update the data. And now server just updates the data, and after updating the data, server also updates the E tag by in itself. Now let's assume client 2 after some period of time, which is holding still the old E tag, makes a put request on the same resource which has this E tag. Now server checks on server side, the E tag which I received, is it matching with the latest E tag I have? It doesn't match. As a result of that, server says, I'm rejecting your update. There is something changed in the meantime in me. There was somebody else who have updated this data. I cannot match and compare the E tag which I have given to you. Please reload the resource once again. Or maybe you can give options to the client. You can say, hey, would you like to overwrite? Would you like to reload the latest resource with the latest E tag and then update, and then everything is going to be smooth? So all these things you can actually control with the help of E-tag. Such an amazing concept, and this is all used for a lot of different software applications these days. Modern applications in browsers, we use this such a powerful E-tag concept in the system, and that's what, guys, SAP Gateway also does. It provides you a support for E-tag. So how do you enable these E-tags? So let's have a quick look at the response last time, what we were getting in the server. So you can see here the response. I'm going to run this into the browser. And you would see that when I run this call into the browser, I don't right now see any E tag. Let me just gonna copy that. And I will just, one second, run this in my browser. So I'll go to my browser and try to run that call over here in my browser. And you would see that some data is getting loaded. Let me load it in the JSON format because that's what you guys are more comfortable. And then you can see, guys, we are getting some metadata, and there is nothing like E tag right now because we have not enabled the E tag support at this moment. So anybody can go and update the data without any check, without any comparison of E tag being done right now. It simply blindly goes and update, and that can probably create issues in long run in a software where you would assume that one resource can be acquired and edited by multiple users simultaneously, right? If you're building such an application where you would like to support kind of a locking mechanism with the Fiori application, you would definitely need to use this concept of E-tag, entity tags. All right. So how do we enable that? It's an inbuilt feature. You just have to mark in the metadata of your OData saying that, hey, I want to use certain field as my E-tag. So the most favorable, the most of the cases, the field which we use is last change date and time. That's something which can act like an E tag for you, because that's the field which is going to tell you, or which is going to tell the server whether something was changed or not. Since last I was doing something, whether something was changed or not. When was my last sales order changed? And that can also act like that timestamp actually acts like a E tag for you. So to enable this E tag now, guys, we need to go to the server, and of course we need to update the metadata of our OData service. And that metadata will define, in that metadata we will define which is exactly our E tag field, right? So typically it's a timestamp field, guys, always, all the time. So all right, let's go to the system. I will just quickly connect to my S4HANA system, and you can see already we had earlier created this ZOFT E tag in our last session. If you're seeing the land down to this video directly, I would request you to please look at the part 1 video, which is already published on my website under Anubhav Learning Series. Website name is onlinefioretrainings.com. Under the Anubhav Learning Series, you can find all the parts, including the source code and this presentation, which I'm covering for all of you right away into this Anubhav Learning Series section. So you can download the presentation, and if you feel these videos are helping you, please try to donate something, because it takes a lot of hard work to bring these content right at your doorstep. All right, let's come back. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide a support for E-tag. So we'll quickly jump to the MPC extension class. So there you go, that's MPC extension class, modal provider class. And guys, if you are not comfortable what is MPC extension, DPC extension, please subscribe my my UI5 and Fiori training, because that's where we cover these things in detail about development of OData from scratch. All right, let's come to MPC extension, and there is a define method. I'm just going to go for change and redefine this define method. So let's go inside and just redefine this method. And in this method, we will definitely call the superclass method define. And now over here, guys, we will be basically telling the system, hey system, could you please mark one of my property as etag. Guys, also in the last session, we have made the product text or the sales order text as an editable field. So I would also take this opportunity to now mark that also as an updatable property true. So for that, let's access the object for the entity model. So I'll say model object, and that's part of me, my current class object. And I will just call this get entity type method, and we will be mentioning the entity type name. You remember I have already noted down the entity type name in my last video over here, and that's your entity type name. Just copy that and let's bring it up here. That's my entity type, and I'll say, hey, in this entity type there is a property which I would want to get you. So get me the property, and let me just make it little readable for you guys. So you could see that over here. Let me just, yeah, all right. So get me the property name is something, and then for this property I would like to mark updatable as 2. Yeah, so the first thing which I'm going to make and tell the system, hey, make this as set updatable true. That's a metadata I'm marking. All right, and the property which I will be marking is updatable. Last session we have allow updation for the text property. So it was sales order underscore text property. So that was the property, and now let's access the field which is this changed date and time field. You can also go once again to SEGW and check the field name. You can also check the metadata right into the browser. So you can see this is the field last change date in text. That is the field I would like to make it as my etag field. So just access that field and enable the etag support. So just have to make one small API call to enable this as etag supportable. So what is that called? Set as etag. That's it, guys. That's the only thing you got to do. And I'll just save this metadata and let's activate quickly. Awesome, guys. That's it. You got to do nothing else. Amazing, guys. Awesome. So now you enable the etag support and watch out the response. Now I'm going to call this once again the get call. Watch out these 3 properties right now. I'm going to call a get, and oops, it's not working. Maybe got to refresh the cache once. So let's go to main service transaction to refresh the gateway cache. I'm going to refresh, reload the metadata once again. Just go to filter and put the service name ZOFT etag SRV. And there you go. And we're just going to say load metadata, please. And wow, there you go. You can go back and refresh once here. And wow, voila, there you go. You can see on your screens, there is a new property which is added as part of etag. Now, guys, the way you used to do update is little different. You cannot do an update now to database, to the OData without sending this etag at all. Okay, let me try to fire an update call, which we also tried it in the last session and we were successful in that. And now I'm going to repeat that call once again. So I go to the gateway client and I will try to create a call to update the data. So awesome, let's try that up. So what's my entity set name? Let me just gonna go and get that. So that's my entity set name. Just going to copy this call from here. And please get me the data for this and just execute. And you get one record, and I'm just going to use that as a payload for update. want to make an update request like we did last time, guys. So that's what we will be doing. And watch out, guys, interesting. Yeah, so I will now change the description. So last time we were successfully able to change the description, and what now, watch out. And I'll say now after ETag implementation. All right, that's what I'm doing. And watch out here, this particular ETag I'm right now copying for my convenience, guys. I'm just copying this ETag currently, which from the GET request into my file. Yeah, here I'm just kind of saving that because we would need this later. And now, guys, let's put a put request without this directly on the key field. And this is what exactly we tried last time, and it worked in my past video. Right now, what do you think, it should work or not? Ideally it should work because it worked also in the last video. No, guys, it's not going to work because now you have an ETag in place and system expect ETag all the time in an update request. Yeah, so let's execute and blast it. You can see, guys, it's giving you an error. It says data service request is required to be conditional. Try using if match header. Very important, guys. Now system won't allow you to update until you tell what was the timestamp, what was the ETag I've sent you when you get the resource. Yeah, so we already saved it here in PPT, and now I will pass this ETag, and this is now becomes mandatory for every request. And I'll say if matched. Yeah, that's what I have to pass. You can see here if match, and let me pass that ETag. Click on OK, and now I have an ETag in the payload, and I can say execute. And you can see it's giving still an error. Why? If match, that's what we had passed. Ideally it should allow me to edit the data now. Let me try to execute one more time. No, it's not giving. I think if match M should be small. Let me try to delete this and add one more time. If match, and let's give it a try. And let me just execute the put request one more time. Oops, not working. What am I missing? So maybe I'll give one more try. Maybe I just try to add one more time. Click on add, and maybe it should be case sensitive. So just put if-match in small letters, and we will just go back and pull it out our tag once again. So I'll just pick it up, the tag, and that's my tag for the record. Make sure there are no spaces at the end. Click on OK, and now we can go ahead and shoot this. So we will now make a call one more time, and let's see what happens. As a result of that, we should be able to see that considering this ETag being passed, system should be able to create this record. So let me just change the value here. So now I've added the ETag, and I'm changing a value. So say wow, the ETag works. Yeah, so let's click on execute, and remember it's a put call on 5000, and let's say execute. And voila, there you go. You can see, guys, status is 204 because now we have got the values updated into database. So this is how ETag helps you to update the data into the backend system. And in case if there are concurrent updates, it's going to just simply ignore those updates because system would assume that you are trying to make a call which is kind of with the old timestamp, with the old ETag, and then system would reject. So once again, if I just quickly simply go and click on execute button, it's going to give me an error because that ETag is now invalidated. Data got updated in database table, and now it has got a new timestamp, the change that date, and that is what your ETag is. So since now I will again fire an update call, and there you go. You see it gives me an error because system already sees that, okay, there was a change, and now the ETag which client is sending is no more valid. It's not matching with the ETag which we have in DB after the change. So that is how exactly ETag works, and this is going to greatly help us while avoiding concurrent updates. The client has the ETag, and if that doesn't match with the server simply rejects the update to the database table. In my next section, in my next video, guys, I will be showing you how to integrate this with the Fiori application. So basically we will be orchestrating all this stuff from the Fiori app. So if you want to know more about that, if you want to see that next video, please don't forget to subscribe on my YouTube channel. You will find the videos already in Anubhav Learning Series playlist. And also, if you would like to download the complete source code, please do not hesitate to watch out my website onlinefurytrainings.com in Anubhav Learning Series section. You can go ahead and download. I am putting already the description of this site as well as my video link into the chat window. Also, you could watch the part number 1. If you have not seen that, you directly jump to part 2. Maybe it is confusing. Please watch my part number 1. That's also you can find here in the description of this YouTube video. With that, once again, Anubhav signing off. Thank you so much, and catch you up in the next video where we will integrate this with a Fury application.